Every deity in Sornith loved Enotian a lot, but the Stormcatcher who lived in the Tempest Spire did not. The Stormcatcher... Let me try that again. Every deity in Sornith loved Enotian a lot, but the Stormcatcher who lived in the Tempest Spire did not. The Stormcatcher hated it the whole 2-week season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be that strange chest gave him only rocks. It could be that last year Steve stole all his socks. But I think that the most likely theory of all may have been that his snoot was 2 sizes too small. Whatever the reason, the chests or the socks, he stood there on Enotian, hating the knocks, staring down from the spire with a cold, loathing glare at the flocks full of knocks and their friends in the air, for he knew every dragon in Sornith had flew over to Baldwin's in his bubbling brew. And they're melting their trinkets, he shouted with force. Tomorrow is Enotian, after rollover, of course. Then he growled with a smile that was nearly a smirk. I must make my workers get back to work. For tomorrow he knew that each Tempest recruit would be fighting off mimics until they dropped loot, and then they would cheer every Ridgeback and Fae, and after they opened their chests, they would play. Play, play, play. That's the one thing he hated, the play. If they keep up the party, I'm docking their pay. And then they would snack, and they'd snack, and they'd snack on fish plants and insects 99 to a stack, which was something best saved till July's thundercrack. They'd shovel down snacks till their stomachs grew wide, and then they'd do something he couldn't abide. Every dragon in Sornith, whatever their flight, be it nature or plague or shadow or light, they swore in a circle and the knocks would start singing. They'd sing and they'd sing and they'd sing, sing, sing. And the more Bostad thought of this whole nocturning, the more Bostad thought, I must stop this whole thing. Why, 4 sparking years I've put up with it. Now I must stop this Enotian from coming. But how? Then he schemed up a plot, a crafty new plot. The Stormcatcher schemed up a wicked new plot. I have the blueprints, he boomed, looking smug, and he chugged all the coffee from his favorite mug. He convinced a new intern to craft him a guise that the dragons of Sornith would not recognize. I look just like a nocturne, he bellowed with glee. With these fake horns and cloak, they'll not know it's me. All I need is a mimic, the Stormcatcher said. But our budget is tight, so I'll make one instead. So he called his familiar, and quickly he dressed his good lightning sprite friend as a fierce mimic chest. Then he rolled up his blueprints and folders and files, and his wires and scrap metals, his levers and dials, and threw all the parts in the back of a wagon. Every nocturne would think him a trading post dragon. Then he rolled off to the nocturne soiree, and while they were sleeping, set up his doom ray. All the nocturnes were dreaming, each without care, of the theming Stormcatcher who lurked near their lair. He borrowed the muck and the slime and the goo, and all the sludge from the bubbling brew, the candles, the capes, the macks, and the clocks, the cobwebs, the witch hats, and even the butt rocks. He pilfered their treasures on spindly legs, and in full caps lock said, No, I'll steal all the eggs! But when Bostad got to the unhatched egg heap, he saw a young nocturne who wasn't asleep. My woolcrafter plan has been foiled by a child, the Stormcatcher shouted as the Noctcatchling smiled. Then she realized his scheme and started to cry, and with tears in her eyes said, Why, Bostad, why? Why are you taking our nocturne eggs? Why? But, you know, the Stormcatcher is crafty and smart, so he crafted a lie that would pull at her heart. These eggs are mine, child, the Stormcatcher lied. I'm keeping them safe from the beastglens outside. His blatant lied work. Then he patted her head. He gave her some blueprints to read before bed. And when the young nocturne flew off Looking bored, the stormcatcher leapt up and ransacked the hoard. In the wagon he shoved all the eggs that he stole, and to top it off, he took their knock scroll. He carted off treasures, the cave was robbed clean. But to vex them a little, he left one smirk Jean. Then he did the same thing to the other 15, leaving only glow dust and a measly smirk Jean. It was almost roll over, each and every last dragon, all the dragons asleep when he packed up his wagon, packed it with chests, with apparel, with treasures, with butt rocks, with vistas and scrolls for good measure. Target locked, the boss said, nearly twirling his stash. They'll all get back to work when their loot's turned to ash. Then he fired his doom raid at the festive collection and grinned as he watched scientific perfection. The items were glowing, they began to combust, and in just a few seconds they all turned to dust. The muck and the slime and the ooze and the goo and all the sludge from the bubbling brew. The candles, the capes, the masks, and the clocks, the cobwebs, the witch hats, and even the butt rocks. Only a pile of dust glowed on the floor as the stormcatcher let out a triumphant roar. "It is done!" said the deity with great jubilation. "Tell every dragon I have cancelled vacation." His lightning sprite shrieked, "Your plans are the best. If the Nocturnes have no loot, then there'll be no more fest." The stormcatcher bellowed, "Silence!" he said. "By now all the dragons will be waking from bed. I simply must hear their dismay as they find that they must return to their old daily grind." So he paused, and the boss put one claw to his ear. As listening carefully, he started to hear no cries of deep anguish, no sniffling, no moaning, no whining, no sighs, not even groaning. The sound wasn't sorrow. For once he was wrong. But listening further, he heard it, a song. He looked over the plains in a bit of a trance as he heard dragon song from the shifting expanse. Every nocturne of Sorneth, whatever their flight, had rose into song. This couldn't be right. Even his ridgebacks had joined in the fun. "This cannot be right," he complained. "They have won?" Despite all his wickedness, brains, and ambition, the dragons assured that Sorneth had thwarted his mission. "This warrants further research," said the god, "for this feast to proceed without treasure. How odd." With a quill and some paper, he puzzled things out, and after a minute he let out a shout. "Eureka!" he said, and it fell into place, while each dragon could wear a big grin on their face. "Perhaps it is not about money to spend. Perhaps Night of the Nocturne is best shared with a friend." And what happened then? Well, it's quite hard to say, but the stormcatcher's snoot grew 3 sizes that day. With party hat perched on the tip of his snout, he joined in the chorus with a thundering shout, and he brought back the eggs and the rest of it too. Sure, it was dust, but hey, what can you do?